Draw a line on a map. Start at Bougainville in the east, end at Borneo in the west. 3,000 kilometers of jungle, ocean, and mountains. In 1945, Australia was fighting 6 separate wars across that entire arc, simultaneously. 6 fronts, 6 jungles, 6 enemies. While America's newspapers were screaming about Iwo Jima and the bombs falling on Japan, Australian soldiers were bleeding in jungles the world had already forgotten about. Nobody was watching. Nobody was writing about it. And that is exactly what makes this story different. By late 1944, MacArthur had moved north. The Americans were chasing Japan toward Tokyo. The big battles, the famous names, the front pages, all of it was moving away from Australia. So what did Australia get? The leftovers. Every Japanese force that had been bypassed, surrounded, and left to rot in the jungle. Still armed, still fighting, still dangerous. Australia was handed those men and told to finish the job. So 6 Australian divisions went back into the jungle. And what they found there was not a broken enemy. It was a trapped one. And trapped animals are the most dangerous kind. Front 1. Bougainville. 40,000 Japanese soldiers on one island. The Americans had contained them. Australia was ordered to destroy them. 30,000 Australians moved in 3 directions at once through jungle, so thick you could lose a man 3 meters ahead of you. The rain never stopped. The disease never stopped. And the Japanese never stopped. On the night of April 4th, 1945, 1,100 Japanese soldiers attacked 129 Australians at a place called Slater's Knoll, one small mound beside a river. The Japanese crossed the Puriata in the dark and were cut down by machine gun fire in the moonlight. The Australians ran out of food, ran out of water, dug a well inside the perimeter under enemy fire. Communications broke down completely. Runners carried messages through active gunfire. They held the knoll. 620 Japanese dead in 10 days. 1 Victoria Cross awarded. The 25th Battalion lost 189 men killed and wounded defending a piece of ground that never made a single front page. Front 2, New Britain. 93,000 Japanese soldiers. Cut off. Starving, but not surrendering. The Australian 11th Division contained them across jungle terrain that had already broken men in earlier campaigns. Slow, grinding, invisible to the outside world. Front 3, Aitape Wewak. The Japanese 18th Army had once been one of Japan's most feared formations in the Pacific. By 1945, it had 35,000 men left. No supply lines, no air cover, no food. Australian soldiers of the 6th Division pushed them back toward Wewak through terrain so hostile that for every man evacuated with a wound, 3 more were evacuated sick. What happened to the Japanese 18th Army in those final months is almost too dark to describe directly. The documents exist. The accounts exist. Australia's 6th Division was still fighting them when the atomic bombs fell. Front 4. Porton Plantation, June 8, 1945. An Australian force attempted an amphibious landing on the northern coast of Bougainville. Everything went wrong at once. The landing craft touched down in the wrong location. The supply barge grounded on coral. The Japanese had reinforcements waiting. Australian soldiers were pinned on an open beach with nowhere to go. Rescue craft sent to extract them also grounded on reefs. Men went into the water. The water was shark-infested. When it was over, 27 Australians were dead or missing. 69 were wounded. It was the only Australian defeat of the entire Bougainville campaign, and you have probably never heard of it. Front 5 and 6, Borneo, May to July 1945. 3 separate amphibious landings, Tarakan, Labuan, and Brunei Bay, Balikpapan. More than 75,000 Australians fought in Borneo. That number is larger than the 60,000 who served at Gallipoli. Let that land for a moment. The Borneo campaign involved more Australians than Gallipoli. Gallipoli is in every history book, every school curriculum, every Anzac Day speech. The Borneo campaign is barely a footnote. At Tarakan, the plan said 3 weeks. The Japanese made it 2 months. 225 Australians killed. At Balikpapan in July 1945, an entire Australian division stormed heavily defended beaches. 6 weeks later, Japan surrendered. 6 weeks. Men died at Balikpapan 6 weeks before the war ended. The question nobody wants to answer. While those 6 campaigns were running, the question was already being asked in the Australian Parliament. What exactly is the strategic purpose of all this? Japan is losing. The Americans are closing in. Why are 75,000 Australians fighting their way through Borneo in July 1945? Brigadier Hammer, commanding his brigade on Bougainville, told his men directly before one major operation. He said every man knew as well as he did that the operations were mopping up and were not vital to winning the war. He said it plainly. Then he ordered the advance, and his men went. That is the thing about this story that history books struggle to hold. These men knew. They could read a newspaper. They understood that the main game had moved elsewhere. They fought anyway, not for headlines, not for history, for the man next to them, for the order that had been given, for the belief that what they were doing was right, even if nobody was watching. When Japan surrendered, on August 15, 1945, Australian soldiers were still in the field. Some were mid-operation. Some had buried men that morning. The 6 campaigns of 1945 produced more than 2,000 Australian dead. In jungles the world had already moved on from against an enemy history had already written off. Their names are in the Australian War Memorial. Their battles are in the official histories. But in the public memory, in the stories, people actually tell the 6 campaigns of 1945 sit in a silence that has never quite been filled. Not because these men were forgotten, because the world was looking somewhere else.